Close your eyes for a moment and imagine this. You walk into a museum and see a marble statue. A father and his two sons coiled into a giant serpent. Their faces are twisted in pain, their bodies strained. But strangely, their suffering looks beautiful. Now imagine reading Virgil's Aeneid, where the same scene is described. The cries of agony, the writhing of muscles, the horror of death in vivid, brutal details. Why does the sculptor show noble restraint while the poet spares no terror? Why does the same story change so drastically depending on whether it's carved on stone or told in a tale? This puzzle fascinated Gotthold Ephraim Lessing, and his work became the most influential works of the aesthetics in 18th century. Laocoön, an essay on limits of painting and poetry. Today, we will explore how he redefined the boundary between words and images, and why his ideas still matter today in the age of film, television, and digital media. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well. I am Dr. Riya Dotto and I make videos on English literature, literary theory, and linguistic topics. If that is something of interest to you, consider subscribing. So without further ado, let us begin the lecture. To understand Lessing's work, let us first situate it. Laocoon was written in mid-18th century, during the European Enlightenment. It was an era of rational inquiry, intellectual debate, and development of aesthetic as a discipline. Lessing was a German writer, dramatist, and a critic, often considered a forerunner of modern literary criticism. He championed intellectual freedom, sought to bring clarity and discipline in the study of art. The inspiration of this essay came from the famous Hellenistic sculptor Laocoon and his sons, discovered in Rome in 1506. It depicts the Trojan priest Laocoon and his sons being strangled by a sea serpent. The sculpture is dramatic, painful, and highly expressive. Lessing observed that in literature, specifically in Virgil's Aeneid, Laocoon's suffering is depicted in much more graphic detail and in a more horrific way. This difference, what a poet says and what a sculptor shows, prompted Lessing to ask, why do different art forms present the same subject differently? Lessing's central claim of this essay is simple yet profound. Painting and poetry, that is, visual and verbal arts, are defined by different types of rules because they work in different mediums. Painting is a visual art and that operates in space. It arranges figures side by side simultaneously. Its strength is in depicting bodies, forms, and visible movements. On the other hand, poetry is a literary art and it operates in time. It arranges words sequentially. Its strength is in depicting actions, movements, and unfolding events. Therefore, a painter should focus on capturing beauty in a single moment of time, and a poet should focus on capturing action in temporal progression. Let's return to Laocoön to illustrate Lessing's points. The faces of Laocoön and his sons express pain, but it is in a noble way. The sculptor has not twisted Laocoön's face in a grotesque way to depict the agony. Why? Because expressive distortion would compromise beauty, which is the painter or the sculptor's main concern. The sculptor selects the pregnant moment, a single instant that suggests both past and the future. The viewer can imagine what led up to it and what may follow. On the other hand, Virgil's Aeneid describes Laocoon's cries in a horrific way. The blood-curdling screams, the violent twist of the body. Poetry, Lessing says, is not constrained by physical beauty. It can depict the extremes of human suffering because it unfolds in time, allowing the reader to imagine the action so vividly. Thus, the same event is expressed differently because the medium is different. One of Lessing's most important contribution is the idea of a pregnant moment. For visual artists, the artist must select a single moment which is full of potential, pregnant with what came before and what will come after. If they depict too much action or too much horror, the viewer has nowhere to go. The image becomes static, grotesque, and confusing. For example, in painting, an artist depicting Hercules fighting the Hydra should choose a moment that shows strength and struggle, and not a blurred chaos of limbs. But for the poets, they are free to narrate actions step by step. They can describe Laocoon's scream, his writhing body, and the serpent's tightening of the coils in sequence. This progression is natural in the temporal flow of poetry. This pregnant moment signifies that visual arts communicate in its own limits, while poetry can move dynamically. Lessing's ideas challenge the previous aesthetic theories, especially Horace's famous line, Ut pictura poesis. As is painting, so is poetry. Horace has suggested that painting and poetry are sisters, almost identical in function. Renaissance critics repeated this analogy, often blurring the distinction. Lessing disagrees. He insists that while they are related arts, their boundaries must be respected. There are a lot of consequences of Lessing's theory. For painting and visual arts, beauty and harmony should take precedence over violent truth. Artists must balance truth with aesthetic ideals. For poetry and literature, poets can explore psychological depths, extreme emotions, and sequence of actions. They are not bound by physical beauty. And for criticism, critics should not judge one art form by the standard of another. For example, one critic should not criticize painting for its failure to narrate, and a poet for its failure to depict a vivid snapshot. Like any influential theory, Laocoon also invited debates. There are strengths and criticism, obviously. For example, it establishes a clear methodology for distinguishing media. This essay influenced modern aesthetics, including thinkers like Kant, Hegel, and later semioticians. It anticipated the modern discourse on medium specificity in art form. Some argued that Lessing overstated the boundaries, and in reality, art forms often overlap. Think of expressive painting, poems that talk about paintings, or narrative painting. In the 20th century, multimedia and film challenges this boundary between spatial and temporal art form. Yet his framework remains valuable for understanding why different media approach the same subject differently. To conclude, Lessing's theory is not about just a one poem or one painting only. It is about the fundamental difference how human beings depict the world of art and literature differently. Painting works in space, poetry works in time. Visual art captures the pregnant moment, while poetry narrates the sequence of actions. The Laocoon example illustrates how each medium chooses its method. Sculpture emphasizes beauty and restraint. Poetry emphasizes movement and passion. Even in today's multimedia culture, cinema, graphic novels, and digital storytelling, Lessing's questions remain alive. What can images do that words cannot? What can words do that images cannot? This ultimately is the enduring legacy of Lessing's Laocoon. I hope this lecture was helpful. For more videos like this, keep an eye on my channel and consider subscribing. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.